I need to tell you something that most women will never admit to a man. Not because we don't know it, because we do. We know it better than we know almost anything else about ourselves. But admitting it out loud feels dangerous somehow, like handing over a map to something we have always kept private. I am going to hand you that map tonight. I have been in relationships where I stayed far longer than I should have. And I have walked away from men who, on paper, were everything a woman is supposed to want: stable, kind, available, devoted. And I could not explain to them, or honestly to myself, why their devotion did not hold me, why something kept slipping away no matter how much they offered, why I felt more drawn to certain men who gave me so much less in the obvious ways. It took me years to understand what was actually happening. And when I finally did, I realized it was not about those specific men or those specific relationships. It is about something that runs through every woman's psychology, whether she is aware of it or not. Something that operates below the level of choice, below the level of logic, in a place where rational thought simply does not have access. Tonight, I am going to tell you three things that men do, usually without any strategy behind it, that make it almost impossible for a woman to stop thinking about them. Not tricks, not manipulation, not a script to memorize, something much more powerful than any of that. Stay with me until the end, because the third one is the thing I have never heard any woman say out loud, and it is the one that changes everything. But first, I need to destroy the lie that has been costing good men everything. There is a story most men have been handed about women: that we want effort, that we want someone who will prove again and again and again through actions and gestures and sacrifices that we are the most important thing in his world, that the more he gives, the more loyal we will feel, that love is built by accumulation, by adding more and more to the pile until it becomes too heavy to walk away from. I understand why men believe this. We say it all the time. We talk about wanting to feel special, about wanting to be prioritized, and we mean it when we say it. But here is what we do not say, because most of us do not fully understand it ourselves. What makes us feel special is not the volume of what someone gives us, it is the quality of how someone sees us. And those are two completely different things. A man can do everything. He can remember every detail, show up every time, give everything he has. And a woman can receive all of it, appreciate every gesture, feel genuinely grateful, and still feel something slowly, painfully draining from the connection. And she cannot tell him why, because how do you tell someone that their effort, their real, sincere, generous effort is somehow making things worse? How do you say that out loud without sounding like a monster? So she stays quiet, and the distance grows. And eventually she leaves, or she stays in a way that is worse than leaving. This is the story I lived. This is the story that made me want to understand what was actually happening beneath the surface of attraction. And what I found changed the way I see every relationship I have ever been in. These are the three things that actually work. The first thing: have you ever been in a conversation with someone and felt, for the first time in a long time, like you were actually being seen? Not complimented, not evaluated, not pursued, actually seen? I remember the first time a man looked at me like that. We were at a dinner with mutual friends. He was sitting across from me. And at some point in the middle of a conversation I was having with someone else, I became aware that he was watching me. Not in the way that makes you uncomfortable, in the way that makes you feel strangely solid, like whatever you are saying matters in a way it did not matter 30 seconds ago. He did not jump into the conversation. He did not make a joke to get my attention. He just listened, really listened, in a way that most people, men and women both, almost never actually do. When I finally turned to him directly, he held eye contact for a moment before he responded. Not aggressively, not nervously, just calmly. And what he said back was not flattery. It was insight. He had actually heard me, not just the words, but the thing underneath the words that I had not fully articulated even to myself. I thought about that man for 2 weeks. Not because of how he looked, not because of what he offered me, because of how I felt in those few minutes of being genuinely paid attention to. This is the first thing: full, unhurried, unapologetic attention. Not performed attention, not the attention a man gives while simultaneously planning his next line. Real attention. The kind that comes from a man who is so secure within himself that he does not need to perform or fill every silence or demonstrate his value while you are still speaking. He can simply be present with you, fully, without agenda. Here is what most men do not understand about this. Women are surrounded by men who are broadcasting at us. From the moment we enter a social space, we are receiving signals, presentations, performances. It is exhausting, and we have become experts at sensing when attention is real and when it is transactional, when a man is listening because he is genuinely interested versus when he is listening because he is waiting for his turn to be impressive. The man who gives real attention stands out immediately. And I mean immediately. Within the first few minutes of an interaction, something shifts in how a woman feels. Not because she made a decision, because her nervous system responded to something it almost never encounters. A man who is completely here, with no performance running in the background, nothing to prove, nobody to become. That quality of presence is more attractive than almost anything a man can say or do. And the most interesting part? The older and more experienced a man becomes, when he has been through enough to stop needing external approval, that presence becomes natural, not practiced. Natural. The second thing, pay close attention because this next one is the most misunderstood thing in the entire conversation about attraction. And the misunderstanding of it is exactly why so many good men end up on the wrong side of it. The second thing is knowing when to say nothing, knowing when to hold back, knowing how to let something build without rushing to resolve it. I want to tell you something that I am almost embarrassed to admit. There have been men in my life who were not more attractive to me than others I knew. They were not more successful. They were not more intelligent, but they held my attention in a way I could not shake. And when I finally understood why, the answer was both simple and deeply uncomfortable. They were never available in the way that made me stop wondering. Not unavailable in a cruel or manipulative way, not emotionally distant or deliberately cold, but they had their own lives, their own inner worlds, their own direction. And something about that self containment created a space in my mind that I kept filling with thoughts about them, questions I wanted answered, moments I kept replaying, a conversation I had been in with them for days after it technically ended. That is the power of restraint. Not as a game, as a genuine expression of a man who has enough going on inside himself that he does not need to give everything away in the first conversation. Here is what happens in a woman's psychology when a man reveals himself too quickly, when he expresses everything he feels the moment he feels it, when he makes his interest unmistakably obvious without any space for her to come forward on her own. The mystery collapses. And with the mystery, something else collapses too. Something she could not name but will definitely feel missing. Think about a book that tells you in the first chapter exactly what happens at the end. You might still read it, but the way you read it changes completely. The urgency is gone, the curiosity is gone. The thing that made you want to turn the page disappears the moment there is nothing left to discover. I have caught myself on the phone with my best friend saying, I don't know, there's just something about him I can't figure out. And I did not mean it as a complaint. I meant it as the most interesting sentence I had said all week. That not knowing was not frustrating me, it was pulling me forward. It was the reason I kept paying attention. Now, here is the subtle thing that most people miss about this. The restraint I am talking about is not withholding as punishment. It is not calculated silence designed to make someone anxious. It is the natural restraint of a man who has emotional discipline, who does not need to empty himself into every interaction to feel like it counted, who can sit with a powerful feeling and let it exist without immediately translating it into action. That discipline is incredibly rare, and women feel it, not as rejection, as gravity. When a man leans back slightly, not away, but back enough to create space, when he lets her move toward him rather than always moving toward her, when he smiles at something without immediately explaining why, he creates something in that interaction that she will be turning over in her mind long after the conversation ends. That is not strategy. That is the result of a man who is fully alive inside his own experience and does not need hers to complete it. The contrast is sharp and immediate. Eagerness signals that she is the source of his validation. Restraint signals that he already has something worth returning to. And a woman will always be more drawn to the second man. Not because she wants to be treated indifferently, but because something in her is wired to move toward a person who is genuinely full, not a person who is visibly empty and hoping she will fill him. The third thing. Now listen, Everything I have told you has been leading to this. And this is the thing I said I had never heard a woman say out loud, because it requires a kind of honesty that feels uncomfortable even as I type these words. The third thing is direction, not success, not money, not achievement in the visible external sense. Direction. The sense that a man is moving toward something, that there is a purpose animating his life that exists independently of whether or not she is in it. I want to tell you what it feels like to be with a man who has direction, not from the outside, not describing it abstractly, but what it actually feels like as a woman sitting across from him, walking next to him, existing inside his life. It feels like standing next to something warm, not warm in a soft, accommodating way, warm in the way that a fire is warm, alive, generating something. And that warmth is not directed at you exclusively. It radiates outward because it comes from something real, from work that means something to him, from goals that were there before you arrived and will be there regardless of what happens between you. That independence of purpose is intoxicating in a way I find difficult to fully explain. But I will try. When I am with a man who has direction, I feel more interesting. Not because he is complimenting me more, because the standard of someone who genuinely cares about what he is building is higher. His attention, when it lands on me, feels like something worth having. Because I know he does not give it to everything. I know there is a version of him that is deeply focused, deeply serious, deeply committed to something that has nothing to do with me. And that means that when he turns toward me, it means something. Contrast that with a man whose life reorganizes entirely around a woman's presence, whose schedule opens completely the moment she is available, whose interests somehow become her interests, whose entire energy shifts in the direction of making her happy, making her stay, making himself indispensable. I have been on the receiving end of that kind of devotion. And I want to say something about it that is hard but true. It does not feel like love. It feels like pressure, like weight, like a responsibility I did not ask for. When a man makes a woman his entire purpose, he transfers a burden to her that most women do not know how to carry and do not want, because now her happiness is also the source of his. Her presence is the thing keeping his life together, and she can feel that. She feels it every time he asks if everything is okay, every time he adjusts himself to match her mood, every time he puts aside whatever he was doing the moment she needs something. Not because it is the right thing in that moment, but because being needed is the only way he knows how to feel valuable. That dynamic quietly destroys attraction, not in a dramatic moment, in the slow accumulation of ordinary moments where she felt like a purpose instead of a person. The man with direction does not make her his purpose. He makes her a part of something that is entirely different. She is not the reason he gets up in the morning. She is one of the reasons life feels rich. And that positioning that she matters enormously, but the world does not stop without her, paradoxically makes her feel more attached, not less. Here is something I have observed in my own relationships and in every honest conversation I have had with women about what they truly feel, not what they say in public, but what they whisper to each other in private. We are most loyal to men we feel proud of, not financially successful men necessarily, not conventionally impressive men. Men we can look at and feel something when we tell someone else about what he is building. Men whose lives feel like a story we want to be part of. Men who have something that predates us and will survive us. When a man has genuine direction, he does not need to perform strength. He does not need to act confident. The direction itself generates a kind of gravity that she moves toward naturally. Because being near someone who knows exactly where they are going in a world full of people who are drifting feels like standing on solid ground. And women attached to solid ground. I have walked away from men who loved me more than they loved themselves. And I have stayed for men who showed me, through how they lived, that they loved their own life first. Not because I wanted to be secondary, because a man who loves his life brings you into something real. A man who gives you his entire life as a gift is handing you something that was already broken. These three things together, full presence, emotional restraint, and personal direction, are not techniques you can apply from the outside. They are the natural expression of a man who has done the internal work of becoming someone whose life is genuinely worth coming home to, not for her, for himself first. And that is the part the world does not teach. that the most attractive version of you has nothing to do with her. It has everything to do with who you are when she is not in the room, who you are in the morning before anyone is watching, what you are building with the hours of your life that belong entirely to you, the standard you hold for yourself in silence. That man, the one who is fully present, emotionally contained, and moving forward with or without her, that is the man she cannot stop thinking about. That is the man she tells her friends about, the one she goes quiet around in a way that means something real. That is the man whose absence she notices before she has fully processed why. I know this because I have felt it, not as a theory, as the truth that my own psychology kept returning to regardless of what I thought I wanted. You have everything you need to become that man. Not by following a script, by committing to the real, difficult daily work of becoming so completely yourself that the right woman cannot imagine being anywhere else. If this opened something for you, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe to this channel because we say the things here that most people are afraid to say, the truth that lives beneath the surface of every relationship you have ever been in. And we are only just getting started.